Thank you so much, everyone. Recently, about a day ago, the federal government just released a whooping over 240 billion naira in Paris Club refund to about 36 states of the Federation. And in that fund, that's a second tranche of that fund, actually. It now totals about 760 billion Nigerian naira. There is an objective for these funds to be given to the state. The reasons why the federal government says these funds should be given to the state. But Mr. Bismarck Riwani is the CEO of Financial Derivatives. He's an economist who's been talking to us on this. Let me quickly ask you, Mr. Riwani, are some of the states in Nigeria currently insolvent?
Financially insolvent? But not insolvency is one thing, but recklessness, when an insolvent man is even reckless, it gets worse. Thirdly, it elevates the level of risk of these states because these guys are actually borrowing. So not only are their revenues are low, their expenditures are above their revenues, they are borrowing and they are unable to service their debt punctually, and they are becoming a risk, a macroeconomic risk to the banking system. But having said that, the culture of financial recklessness and indiscipline is not just a government phenomenon in Nigeria. We had a situation where the banking system went into a tailspin in 2009. And if I remember rightly, the total cost of the bailout at that time was about 3 to 4 trillion naira. If you take that and you put that in the context of today's state and subnational government indiscipline or insolvency, you find that the insolvency of the banking system due to corporate governance breaches, due to recklessness and all that, was even far in excess of those of the government. But having said that, I think the Minister of Finance has talked about the fact that borrowing helps you, but you need to increase your revenue and block the leakages. And even if you did all of that, you need to be efficient and optimize the resources that you have before you. The acting president has said clearly that we need investments to complement fiscal revenues. If you take the Nigerian budget as a whole, it is less than 5% of the GDP. And therefore, we need to ensure that we create an environment of discipline, an environment of transparency, so investors can complement government expenditure and government investment to ensure that we achieve accelerated growth on a sustainable basis. That is critical to this entire process. So the answer to your question is that yes, many states are financially insolvent. Yes, many states are financially reckless. Yes, there's a crisis of false expectation. People go to Abuja to share money rather than to create wealth. And all of this has to come together, and we need to resolve this and make a mental as well as a fiscal adjustment that we are not as rich as we.
Mr. Riwani, break the ice, if you may. Tonight, a lot of people who are watching us across the states of the Federation, some of them have been owed salaries. Some of them are pensioners who you just saw some sound bites of how painful it is for you to be owed your emolument as a former worker of government. But it looks like a good news for now because some salaries, old salaries, are going to be paid. But how long can this be sustained? What is the good news and what is the bad news for workers who are working under state government across the 36 states of Nigeria?
No, first and foremost, we have a bloated workforce. So a lot of those workers that are claiming worker productivity growth in Nigeria is minus 0.8%. That means Nigerian workers are, on an aggregate basis, unproductive. So let's accept that. An unproductive worker has little or more of a moral right to actually start claiming. But even having then contracted to pay the worker, he must be paid as and when due. So that is true. So one, we have productivity issues. Two, we have fiscal recklessness, which is leading to default on the payments due to these workers. Now, thirdly and most importantly is that we are living on borrowed time. That is, states and federal government with a bloated workforce need to do some restructuring, have to do the mental adjustment. When I'm using the word restructuring, financial restructuring, not political restructuring. That is, you need to actually shed weight and deal with your problems. Extra night, and one of the workers said just now that if there was no Paris Club refund, what would have happened? We cannot continue to live on windfalls, handouts, and bailouts we need to be able to sustain our revenues. We must sustain our revenues so that we can meet our expenses as and when they fall due. If we cannot meet them, then we have to have a program borrowing plan. And that is what is happening. And I also alluded to the fact, and rightfully so, that the exchange rate mechanics of Nigeria shortchanges the state. So we need to adjust that so that the states get the fair value for the dollars they are selling to the federal government via the central bank. But more than anything else, the states have to rationalize themselves. These states we have bloated states with bloated workforce, unproductive workers, and more than anything else, we have, over and above that, we have looting of the treasuries, even at the state and federal levels.
Mr. Riwani, there are allegations that some of these Paris club refunds are even mismanaged. There are cases that I understand that are being investigated, whether or not some of the states the funds are being mismanaged at the level of some of the states. How do you think the federal government can oversee the utilization? I understand that there is an objective for the release of some of these funds. What can you tell us about how the federal government can manage and oversee the utilization of these funds?
In a federal system, the state autonomy, the federal government has no responsibility or no right to ask a state to monitor a state's spending of its money. The states there's a fiscal responsibility law. The states have their House of Assembly, they have their oversight functions and all of that. But once you elect fraudulent people into government, then what you see is what you get. The point is that the whole idea of governance, public sector governance, is lacking in Nigeria. We need to ensure that the followership of this country, not just the leadership, the followership hold the leadership to account. If you elect a crook, then you'll get crooked outcomes. If you elect a fool, you'll get foolish outcomes. If you elect a dummy, then you will have dumb outcomes. So what we are saying here is that let the electoral process produce the guys with quality that can lead, and then let the followership hold the leadership to account for what they are doing.
All right.
And if they fail, then they'll be booted out, and also they should go to prison.
All right, Mr. Riwani, just in 30 seconds, if you can quickly tell us, as it stands now, because we need to round up now, but some sort of advice that you can give, can the states be sustained in the current structure as they are right now? And it's a situation where states have less than 200 million naira left after they paid workers' salary, after they've gotten the FAC allocation. What can be done at this moment? It's a critical situation, isn't it?
There's no provision for states to commit suicide or abdicate their responsibilities. So, I mean, states can give up their certificates of statehood. I mean, I don't know what formula legally you can do, but the whole idea of state viability depends on how can you cut your coat according to your code. Every state in this country receives a certain amount of money. Can you tailor your expenses so that the revenue you receive, together with the revenue you generated, can make you viable? That, I don't care what it is, you must do that. That exercise, that process is a process that must be carried out by the leadership, and that must be executed and monitored by the followership. And more than anything else, you cannot afford in this context to actually start even stealing money when the revenue base of this country and the states are actually shrinking and declining.
All right. Mr. Bismarck Riwani, CEO, Financial Derivatives and Economics, a friend of Channel Television. Many thanks for your thoughts on the program tonight. Well, you heard it there. It's a critical time, an interesting period in our history. Fiscal discipline, fiscal responsibility. You hear these words so often. And the issue of restructuring comes to the fore yet again and again. If you are being owed salaries, well, you've got to hold your leaders by the trouser and make sure they are responsible, because they've taken that responsibility to lead and they need to find solution to their crisis. That's how far we can go on the program tonight. Many thanks for being part of it. Bye for now.